Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to this licensing hearing. Today we're considering a new application for a premises license under the Licensing Act 2003. I'm Martin Brown. I'm chair of the Community Services Committee here and also chair of this panel for this hearing. We'll do introductions in a minute. We'll go around. First, some housekeeping. Not expecting any fire drills today, so if the fire bell rings, we'll leave via the glass doors there, please. Can you please make sure mobile phones or devices are off or on silent? This meeting's a public meeting. It's being filmed. The recording of the hearing will be available for public viewing on the Council's website. By being present here today, you're consenting to being filmed. If this presents any difficulty, please say now. Don't think so, so that's okay. We'll be using these microphones, so when you, to make sure so everyone can hear and for the recording and the broadcast. So when you speak, please, you press the button on your microphone and the red light will come on and then you're live. And when you finish speaking, please turn it off because the system here goes haywire if more than 2 microphones are on. So speak and then turn it off, please. Don't think we have any apologies for absence. Nope. So now we'll just go around and do introductions. As I said, Martin Brown, chair of this panel, chair of Community Service and Licensing. I'm district councillor for Bisley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian. Sorry. Mistake straight off the bat. Ian Hamilton, a district councillor for Cam East and also a member of the Community Services and Licensing Committee.
Good morning, Paul Turner, district councillor for Berkeley Vale, also a member of the Community Services and Licensing Committee.
Good morning, my name is David Mason. I'm a solicitor and I represent the applicant.
Good morning, I'm Sophie Jones and I'm the applicant.
Good morning, I'm Thomas Jones and I'm husband of the applicant.
Good morning, I'm Robert Langley from Arlingham.
Good morning, Tim James, local resident.
Penny Shield and I'm a resident.
Richard Shields, near neighbour.
Sophia Rice, Senior Licensing Officer at Stroud District Council.
Rachel Andrew, Licensing Manager here at Stroud District Council.
I'm Sharon Green, I'm the Legal Advisor to the committee today.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome again. Declarations of interest. Any panel member with a declaration of interest in this case? No, thank you. Any questions before we start on what I've gone over so far? No, that's all clear. And then before we go on to the hearing, there's been one late submission by the applicant. So I think I need to ask, it's really a summary of what the applicant's already said, but it's a new statement of it together with some photographs. Have people had a chance to see this? No. So what should I do? Pass it around?
So if everybody's happy to us to look at those papers in this hearing today, David has got some copies that he can share around. So Chair, if you're satisfied everybody's happy, we'll ask the solicitor to share those and then we'll give everybody maybe just a couple of minutes to have to look at those before we carry on.
So is everyone happy to look at the extra submission? Yeah, I think so. So if you'd like to pass them around, thank you, Mr. Mace. All right, so we'll give everyone a couple of minutes to look at that. Right, so everyone had a chance to look. Shall we ready to go on? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the next part of the proceedings, we get the hearing report from the licensing officer, Rachel. Sophia. Rachel.
Thank you. Yes, that's me today. So welcome everybody to this licensing hearing. We're here today to consider an application for a new premises licence under the Licensing Act for the Farmer's Yard at West End Farm in Arlingham. It's from what I can see on the application form, it's a converted barn at the farm with an outside seating area to the rear, and access is from Church Road, which is a single track country lane, which I think sort of goes out from Arlingham. The applicant is Sophie Jones, who's here today with her husband Thomas Jones, and they're being represented today by David Mason, who is their solicitor today. The application is for sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises and for live music. And the times requested for the sale of alcohol, it's every day from 11 o'clock until midnight. The live music is requested on a Friday and Saturday from 11 o'clock in the evening through till midnight. And you might think, well, that's a bit strange, but the reason for that is because under the Licensing Act, there is an exemption for live and recorded music where a licence grants sale of alcohol up to the hours of 2300 hours. Then there's an automatic right for all premises. If they've got sale of alcohol, they can have live and recorded music without it being on the licence. So if they do get granted sale of alcohol today up to 11 o'clock, then they'd have that automatic entitlement, which we can't take away from them at this hearing today. But that they have also asked to go on past 11 o'clock for that extra hour up till midnight. And then the opening hours on the application are every day from 8:30 through till midnight. With all these applications, an application plan is included as part of the application. And the plan for this licence shows a red line around the building and that outside area at the rear. So the activities and hours requested on the application are for both the indoor and outdoor areas. The application has agreed some conditions with the police already, and for that reason the police have not submitted representation. And these are conditions about Challenge 25, staff training and having refusal and incident logs. So the panel may decide that if they do grant the licence, they most likely would put those as conditions on the licence. We had representations against the application, which is obviously the reason why we're here today for a hearing. There's no representations from responsible authorities, but we received 11 representations against the applications from local residents and also one from Arlingham Parish Council. All the residents live in Church Road or certainly very close to that area, a nearby surrounding area, and obviously we have some of the residents here today. I can confirm that the panel have seen all of the representations that came in. So even people that are not here today, the panel have seen all of them. They've read them all thoroughly, and they will be considering everybody's representation. And obviously the residents that are here today can answer any questions and give any more information that they might choose to when you come to speak shortly. The main concerns are in relation to potential late night noise nuisance from music and also noise from customers and cars leaving the premises. So that links to our objective of public nuisance. And there's also concerns about an increase in vehicles using Church Road, parking on verges, so impact on pedestrian safety, extra noise, and that links to both public safety and the public nuisance objectives. Before I finish, there was just a couple of points I would just like to clarify for everybody here. There were 2 representations in support of the application as well, which were included in that pack. There is some reference in the representations to lack of consultation, but the applicant put up their blue notice on site, took out a newspaper notice, and under the Licensing Act, it prescribes very specifically what the applicant's obligations are, and the applicant has met their obligations under the Act. There's no obligation to do any wider consultation than that with local residents. And also just to point out that the licensing panel today cannot take account of planning issues. We're here today to consider the licensable activities of sale of alcohol and live music in relation to the licensing objectives. If there is any comments about whether there is or is not breaches of planning permission, that would all be dealt with by our planning team. Any enforcement of planning issues is dealt with by them. If there is a license granted today for the licensable activities, if that has any impact on planning, then the applicant obviously would need to follow that up with the planning team just to make sure their planning covers anything that is granted today. And just final point I was going to make, there was some reference in some of the representations about temporary event notices, and I can confirm that some temporary event notices have been submitted by the applicant through this year. Not a large amount, but some of them, but they weren't particularly late hours. And just to remind everybody that any location can have up to 15 temporary event notices a year, and any decision made by the panel today will not take that right away from the applicant, their right to be able to submit temporary event notices. And that's my report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, then we go on responsible authorities, which means people like the police. We don't have any representations from responsible authorities or environmental health today. So we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is other persons, which means local residents for or against the application. So I'd like to invite any of you who would like to speak. Would someone like to start?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the opportunity to speak and kind of talk to you all. I note, doing some of my research, that this is probably the one application that has had the most objections over the last 18 months or so. I also note that you, on the whole, tend to grant the applications, but with a number of conditions potentially connected. And I think that is something that we need to look at. I think the reason why there have been so many objections is the unique location that we are based in. So can I just ask the panel members, have you visited the site?
Yes, I have done walking down to Birdwatch on the edge of the river, actually. So I've been right by, I know where it is.
And have any of you visited at night? So when it's dark? Okay.
Well, early evening, I run, and I've been running.
Yeah, so, and the reason why I asked that, I think at night, the location kind of is very different to it is during the day. And, you know, my family uses the farmer's yard. We go there, we support it. We have no issues with the actual cafe itself. But at night, the location becomes very different. So there's no street lighting, there's a single track, there's no pavement, there's a farm next door that's working. You know all of this. And it makes it very difficult for us to support this because the threat to us of crime and kind of disorder from late night events is quite significant. When there is very limited CCTV, when there is no street lighting, we've got up to 90 people potentially leaving at midnight on a Friday or a Saturday night, walking past our house. I think the other thing to note is that there is no public transport. Taxis don't really go to Arlingham. I think if you punch that into Uber, they go, don't know. And therefore, people are either going to leave by car or they're going to leave on foot. And that raises the potential for significant disturbance to the people around it, of which we represent 3 of them. So I think that is why a number of people in Church Road are frustrated, I think, at this. There's also a Grade 1 listed church, and there's 2 Grade 2 listed properties, one of which, well, both of which belong to us, that are impacted as well. So that's the kind of crime and disorder piece that I think will happen with the late night music. I personally don't have an issue with the granting of a license during the day. My concern is around the night time. Public nuisance. So I sat outside my house a few weeks ago, and there was I think one of the events that you put on was a guitarist and a speaker. And I could hear everything. And I went into my house, I went into every single room in my house. My house is about 130 meters away from the outdoor seating area. And I could hear every single song that the guitarist was singing from my house, including my 10-year-old son's bedroom, which overlooks the back of the outdoor seating area. Now, I live in a listed property. Unfortunately, the council does not allow me to have double glazing. So I have got single pane glass, so I can't mitigate the noise. And my concern is around that late night, additional kind of Friday and Saturday night, midnight, and there is music going on, and my son or sons are trying to sleep. Government sleeping hours recommended 11 till 7, so it's outside of that. So I run the risk of my family potentially being detrimentally impacted on an evening by music and kind of partying going on. I appreciate it may only happen occasionally, but there is still a risk to me that from a public nuisance perspective, I find troubling. It was touched on at the beginning about the lack of engagement. At no point has Sophie come round to me, knocked on the door and said, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we want to do, to hear my concerns or my family's concerns, or to offer any form of mitigation, or to try and show me that what is written here is going to happen. You know, the paperwork that we have just received talks about not wanting to do many late night events. I would ask, why is the application for late night Friday and Saturday nights? That would be, it would suggest to me it's out of kilter to what the business model currently is, and that would suggest potentially there is the risk of doing stuff in the evenings on a Friday and Saturday night, which is completely, wholly out of character with what the kind of the rural area is. I also feel that by granting this license, the council potentially offers the opportunity to give the applicant carte blanche to do what they want. There is a risk, despite what is said, that we may end up in a situation where on a Friday and Saturday night there are parties and there's all sorts going on. I can't, you know, there's no legal right for the applicant to kind of be bounded by what is written in here. So once this is granted, there is a risk that this becomes the start of something bigger. And I think that is the bit that really has got the locals kind of concerned, that this is just the beginning. And by granting your license, you are in effect giving carte blanche to the applicant. Therefore, my consideration should be around encouraging the panel to strike a balance. So it's a balance between allowing a business to do well, to thrive and to expand, but also to kind of consider the needs of the local residents. We live in a really, really uniquely isolated place, incredibly low levels of light and noise pollution. By having this cafe operating at night, I think that's going to fundamentally change how we perceive kind of where we live and the environment in which we live in. And I think that will have, you know, just selfishly a detrimental impact on my family. And that's something that I would like to avoid. So I would encourage the panel to kind of strike that balance between supporting the businesses, but also supporting the local residents. So granting a license with conditions, for example, within normal operating hours or daylight hours, or encouraging the applicant to continue to submit those temporary event notices for a period of time to demonstrate that the mitigation measures that she has suggested work, and that we can all work together, I think would be a fair way for all of us to find a way of making this work so that we're all broadly supportive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. James. Would anyone else from the residents like to speak? Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to speak for myself and for my husband. I can't match Tim's eloquence. We all have to make a living. And West End Farm is a working farm. It has a caravan and campsite, as well as an opportunity to open a farm shop. It currently runs a coffee house. We now see surges for events. And the only source of information that we have seems to be on social media platforms, which we often, as older people, don't often see. It's very difficult for us to see posts on Facebook such as something big is coming, stay tuned. It doesn't really seem a very fair way to communicate with us, not knowing what's under wraps and what might adversely affect us. So under the heading of public safety, again, as Tim so eloquently put, we're single track, we have very few passing places, we have grass verges, which are going to be quagmires probably in the winter. Our big concern is we have a lot of grandchildren, and they use the grass verges as safe places to walk to their playground in Church Road and their playing field. And now, because drivers get frustrated, they're overtaking on these grass verges, and that's one of our concerns. There are no traffic calming measures whatsoever. Nothing's monitored. We're dark and unlit at night. And I hope, Councillor Brown, you come to listen to our owls. We have the most wonderful owl population in our part of the road, because it's so dark and unlit. Call us simpletons, but this is what gives us great pleasure, you know, to witness this. There are no security cameras. There's no police presence, apart from perhaps a random or occasional visit from a police car if there's an incident. And parking and passing places are issues. And then regarding public nuisance, if the applicants receive a full licence for alcohol and music until midnight and continue their social media advertising campaign, this will be profit driven. It has to be, because we have to make a living. But whatever the applicants might promise, we are worried that this will escalate and we'll have no protection. Amplified music from totally uninsulated premises or outside will be inflicted upon us, and partygoers aren't going to read signs asking them to be quiet. We'll have lights and noise from vehicles into the early hours of the morning. So we don't really feel this is going to be family friendly, relaxed or rural. We think it's going to be creeping commercialisation. And I'm sorry, I don't really know how to put this very well, but we accept a steady stream of traffic during the day. And we are quite happy with daytime alcohol, people drinking with their food, but we do strongly object to alcohol and music extending into the evenings in this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else from the residents like to speak? Mr. Shipp.
That's better. Everything has been said that I want to say. I couldn't agree more with all that. I farm next to Sophie and Tom. We have milk tankers, farm traffic going past their premises all the time. You know, well, tanker every day. I'm concerned about parking on the grass verges there. There was a party there weekend before last. Luckily, it didn't coincide with any of our farm traffic, but there would have been a problem, I'm quite sure. And, you know, we have to have full access. Where are they going to park? I mean, I can't see their yard, for instance, going to hold any more than a given number of cars. Are they going to make a bigger car park somewhere else? I can see problems there. And just one other thing, nightlife and wildlife. We have, I think my wife mentioned barn owls, little owls. We have the horseshoe bats there, a well-established colony there. What's this going to do? Has a survey been done on this? But, you know, that's my bit. So certainly this nighttime music and drinking doesn't go well. We've all been to parties late at night, and it doesn't get any quieter as the night goes on. It will impact us and the village as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, Mr. Lang.
Yes, I mean, I just agree with everything that's been said, so I won't repeat any of it. And I fully support what Thomas and Sophie have done up until now, but it's just the likelihood of any escalation in activity, which is inevitable if this all goes ahead, that is the main concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The agenda now asks for allows for questions to other persons. You are the other persons here. So, does anyone on the panel have any questions for the residents?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for the representations that you've given. I'd just like to ask you about the dialogue with the applicant. You've mentioned that most of what you've gleaned has been from social media. I'm not a big follower of social media myself, so I do understand that that's not an ideal way to communicate. Have you actually asked for a meeting with the applicant? And has there been any attempt to sit down together and discuss it?
So I'll talk about a conversation that I had with Thomas 3 days before this was announced. We were talking about the cafe and plans and everything else. At no point was it mentioned. And I thought that was just a little bit, we were talking about everything else, but not about the future around what the cafe and this, because this has a big impact. So I have not gone to Sophie and said, can we please have a meeting? Personally, I don't think that's my role. I think it should be the other way around. They're the ones who are trying to make the changes. And this has gone on over a number of years now. So go back to the original application for the Grove, where engagement was very limited. And I appreciate that, what you said, Rachel, about the requirements for a planning application has been met. But it's just the opportunity to come and knock on the door and just say, hi, this is what we're wanting to do. And it just makes me think that either, not that they're hiding anything, but that actually I can't really believe what is on here, because I think that they may potentially go further than what they are articulating. And that's just a gut that I have, simply based off the fact of there has been no communication with and I'm not alone. It's a number of people, including family members, who are nearby, that haven't been wholly engaged with. And I just think that suggests something that they're perhaps not being wholly truthful about.
We gather that the parish council was sent a letter at the end of July, and the chairman of the parish council didn't come to the chairman's notice because it's holiday time, it's a difficult month, until the 10th of August. And then we were alerted about Sophie Jones' Facebook post on, I think it was August the 17th. Well, in fact, we didn't hear about it because we don't really follow social media. We didn't hear of it until about the 21st. And then we had to scrabble and ask neighbours who didn't know what was going on either, and then get a letter written a bit fast to you for the 26th was your deadline, wasn't it? So there's been a sense of, what's the word, Tim? There's been a sense of confusion, really. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed for your representations. Very interesting and thorough. From what you've expressed, your thoughts, I take it you've got no difficulty with the business trading as it is at the moment. Your only difficulty is the extension of hours. Yes. So if alcohol was part and parcel of the business during normal working hours, there's no objection. But the inference of alcohol until 11 or 12 o'clock at night is exactly just what your worry is.
Yes. So if you go back, I can't remember how long you've been open for, but if you go back to the kind of life before the cafe, the impact has been that there is a significant increase in traffic on the 3 days that it's open. And whilst that's not ideal, it's acceptable because we support farm diversification and everything else, so we accept that. So granting of a license with the condition of, say, sale of alcohol during working hours, 8 till 5, I don't think any of us would have a problem with. It's the late night, it's the Friday and Saturday night until midnight. I would question, why has that been added? If what Sophie has written here is what they are going to do. I just think it's that step too far, and perhaps we need to find that balance where we support what we're doing, but also find a way to support what they want to do as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for the residents? Mr. Mason.
As has been observed, it's really worries of future activities rather than what has happened to date. And so I don't think we challenge any factual matters that have occurred in the past here as being inaccurate, because really there has been no complaints up to now that I can discern which are relevant to the application. So I don't propose to ask them any questions and deal with it in submissions.
Okay, thank you.
Which is probably me.
Thank you. So then we go on to the applicant's turn to address the panel, please.
Thank you. Can I deal with the issue of consultation first? And could I ask you to make particular note that the statutory consultation, as your licensing manager made clear, the law lays down what is required, and those requirements have been met. Also, I think Mrs. Shield made reference to a letter being sent to the council in July by the applicants, and that was the case. And I can tell you that the applicant has attended 2 parish council meetings. Now, it's unfortunate if my client, the applicant, writes to the council in July and they're on holidays and they don't address the letter for a long period of time, but it's hardly the fault of the applicant if she writes to the parish council in a timely manner, and she has attended 2 meetings there. So that's an evidence of consultation, and you will have heard what the people making representations have said. They haven't said, we've asked for a meeting and it's been turned down. So the parish council has been engaged, the statutory requirements have been met. Parish council informed, 2 meetings of the parish council attended to, and there's been no turning away of any offer to consult. And there's been information on social media. And whilst we accept that some people, due to their age or whatever experience, don't use social media a great deal, clearly that has come to their attention. And public notices on the premises and in the papers are the statutory requirements to bring it to the public's attention. So I would ask you to accept that there has been not only the minimum requirement of consultation, but in fact beyond that. And that is not something that should be taken into consideration. I'll deal with a very small point as well. Whilst any farmers, by their nature lovers, when it comes to nuisance, the nuisance is to humans, not to wildlife. So I don't think that you can properly take into consideration an increase in noise and light that might impact owls, for example. I think that's not a consideration that is within your remit today. So you will have listened carefully to the representations, and you will have noticed several words repeating coming in. The word escalation has been mentioned. The word potential has been mentioned. A change in the environment, a start of something bigger. What the residents' concern is, and it's not evidence of what has actually happened, what the residents' concern is that this will in some way, by extending the time in particular on 2 days a week, Friday and Saturday, to midnight, not beyond then, will have a detrimental effect. There's no evidence that the way that this premises has been conducted so far has been conducted in any way that has caused nuisance. And there's no evidence before you that there is likely to be nuisance. And if you seek to impose conditions or refuse the application, it must be done so on the basis of evidence, in my respectful submission. And the evidence you have before you is to the contrary, is that these premises have been open for a year, have temporary event notices, have had no complaints of noise, nuisance. And by their nature, they are comparatively small. This is not like a town or city centre nightclub venue, which is going to attract a great deal of rowdy young people. And indeed, my client, the applicant, would be particularly silly, would she not, to use this premises licence in a way that causes nuisance, knowing that the parish council and the residents are alert to the issues, and knowing that the police and the council have adequate powers to curtail that in terms of reviewing licenses and refusing them. And it would not, in fact, be in accordance with the evidence you have so far of how they run the business model. You will see that the attraction is really to a different type of clientele, locals, walkers, and that kind of thing, not your naturally group of people who would be nuisance and problem makers. It is an isolated venue with little public transport, and therefore it is highly unlikely to attract lots of young people for a great, and it is, unfortunately, the nature of youth that they are the noisy people that with alcohol can cause trouble. So I'd ask you to take into consideration the unlikeliness of this venue causing any actual public nuisance. And as I say, there is no evidence of that. You've heard evidence of the unique location and at night, and there's no street lighting or public transport. Now, insofar as there are no street lights, traffic calming measures, or adequate policing, or public security cameras, that really is a matter of beyond my client's control. She's not able to put down traffic calming measures herself or arrange for public CCTV, which requires the council. What we say is that they wouldn't be needed in any event, but it's not a good reason to refuse or to impose conditions on this application. It's what happens in the future is the concern of these residents, and it's an understandable concern. But just because it's an understandable concern for a representation does not mean that it amounts to any kind of cogent evidence that should lead to the imposition of conditions, let alone the refusal of the license. If I remind you of the submissions, and I think, insofar as this document has been handed out and not entered into the public record, I think I should read it. It's only a one-page document, and these are submissions by the applicant, so it's in the first person. The Farmer's Yard is a small, family-run cafe with a focus on high-quality food, drink, and hospitality. We do not seek to become a late-night bar or nightclub, nor cater for weddings. We are happy to liaise with the neighbours to give notice of any upcoming events. Most of our cafe trade is daytime. Any evening events will be occasional and carefully managed. We are not applying to hold frequent large-scale parties. If I can just tell the panel what has happened in the last month. There's the Longfield Charity Tractor Run, Wild Things Free Children's Craft Morning, Farmer's Yard First Birthday Party, which finished at 5 o'clock, children's storytelling, children's yoga morning, evening candle making workshop, and an evening baby shower. And the kind of events of the evening is that kind of baby shower event rather than any large-scale commercial events that are intended. And there are physical limits. You will have seen the pictures here of the amount of seating and the inside area. And there is a limit to the number of people who, because of the location, the nature of it, and the physical circumstances, are self-limiting in terms of the ability to produce noise. So, number 3, we are a family-friendly venue, regularly welcoming children with their parents to enjoy the cafe and farm surroundings. Alcohol will never be the main focus of our offer. The vast majority of our visitors are families, walkers, and local residents, rather than groups that might cause any difficulty for neighbours. Now, I'll pause there to say alcohol will never be the main focus. Quite often, licensing committees are faced with applications for licensed premises, which will change hands. Trade will be built up, they will be sold on. This family has owned this farm for over 100 years, I believe, and several generations. So you can probably say with some certainty that this is not an exercise in building up a busy venue with the idea of selling it on. And you can rely on the representations by the applicant because of the long-term nature of the association with this premises and her, and she has a young family there, that what she says is going to be what is going to happen, rather than something which will be beyond her control because, for example, they're going to move away. Our rural setting makes us naturally unsuitable for high-volume late-night drinking. Any alcohol sales will be managed by the trained staff under the direct supervision of the licence holder. We are committed to implementing a Challenge 25 policy and refusing service to intoxicated individuals. We will keep a refusal log and an incident book. We fully acknowledge the rural nature of Church Road. We already provide on-site parking within the farmyard and will ensure visitors are directed to designated spaces. Parking in fields can be used in suitable conditions. We have security cameras fitted, covering the entranceway to the building, the entrance to the farmyard and the rear of the building, and are registered with the Information Commissioner's Office. Emergency vehicle access will always be maintained. As farmers ourselves, we are acutely aware of the need for clear routes for tractors, milk tankers and other large vehicles. We would welcome dialogue with residents and the parish council regarding any traffic calming measures they feel would improve safety. The Farmer's Yard is a small family-run cafe that wishes to complement its existing offer with modest alcohol sales and occasionally well-managed events. We do not seek to compete with pubs or wedding venues, nor to alter the rural character of Arlingham. In conclusion, could I refer you to page 6 of the licensing hearing pack? In my respectful submission, any conditions not only must be appropriate and proportionate, but, and your legal advisor will hopefully confirm this, must be evidence-based rather than speculative. The licensing objectives are the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the protection of children. Now, in my respectful submission, it speaks volumes that the responsible authorities have made no representations and that the applicant has engaged with the police and agreed conditions which you are invited to add to the license when granting it. That really is a very significant factor. Because if the police had any concerns about crime and disorder, they have a statutory duty to do it, and in practice, of course, they would do it. Had the environmental health had any concerns about noise or public nuisance, they would have made representations, even cautious ones, asking you to consider a condition or observing that there was a potential for this. But your responsible authorities have considered these applications. They're very, very used to and experienced in these applications. They're very experienced in the potential difficulties, and they have made no representations. And in my respectful submission, in the absence of representations from responsible authorities and any evidence of previous difficulty and any cogent evidence which points to a future difficulty, because I don't think such evidence can exist, then in my respectful submission, you should grant the application as applied for. Those are my submissions.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Paul.
I appreciate your submissions and considerations. However, there were several areas in there that left me somewhat concerned, and that was you're talking in terms of it being a family environment, etc. And yet we're regularly advertising, and I've seen it myself on social media, which doesn't necessarily encourage local activity and doesn't always encourage the more mature residents, more mature clientele. When you're thinking in terms of extending this into the late hours, you made a minor point earlier about the fact that a minor point regarding birds. I would also raise a minor point with regard to your submission, and in as much as you made the point of the applicant making application for an extension to midnight was your term, not 12 o'clock. And midnight is, as it says, a very late hour in the evening when there could be potential noise and disturbance for the local clients, local residents. So it doesn't lend itself really to what the submission is being made with regard to the fact that this is going to be a very minor development in terms of attracting more business to the client. Everybody recognises and appreciates they have a business to run, but it also has to balance with regard to the environment they trade in and the local residents that they work with, one would hope.
What's the question? The question for...
Sorry?
Question for Mr. Mason.
Yes. So the question is, do you feel that the submission for midnight is a fair and reasonable one on the local residents?
Yes, I believe it is a fair and reasonable one, given it's limited to 2 days a week. The evidence you have before you is that it's not going to be fully utilised for every Friday and Saturday. But clearly, if you have somebody who wishes some kind of a commemorative event, a 50th wedding anniversary, or this or whatever, you have to have the flexibility, because these things normally happen on a weekend, to be able to accept those things and those potential events, which is why the application is made and framed in the way it is. You make reference to social media. I don't see any evidence before the committee of any social media posts. It's not in the bundle, so I don't know what you were referring to. Could you amplify?
Well, the social media that I've seen is to encourage more people. Obviously, it's a business venture, and the social media aspect doesn't necessarily lend itself to the local business. It's encouraging things out of town, which is more parking and more disturbance that potentially could become a problem to the neighbourhood.
Well, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen that evidence before the committee. There's no evidence before the committee in relation to that, so I don't think that's a matter that can properly be taken into consideration by the panel in making its decision. What can be taken into consideration by the panel is the fact that it's limited to 2 nights a week. It's limited to midnight, not 1, 2, 3 in the morning. The evidence you have had has been very clear from the applicant that it's going to be occasional and not constant. The flexibility needs to be there to be able to run a business. Farms have to diversify or they die, and they have to be supported, and supported by the, in my respectful submission, the council as well, in ensuring that they are able to offer a commercially varied offering. And you have heard what has been said by the applicant in evidence that that will not lead to a nuisance. And what you have heard from the representations are worries and concerns about the future, which are not evidence-based. And so in my respectful submission, what you should be doing is saying, well, the evidence we have before, this is a reasonable application, it is not an over-the-top application, and it is something that it would be not be proportionate or reasonable to impose conditions, so above those that are accepted by the police, for example.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, please, how many events have there been on TENS licenses over the last year? Do we know that?
Well, I was instructed that there were only 1, but I did see the licensing manager says that there were few. So I don't know whether there is more than 1. My clients recollect that there's only been 1 temporary event notice so far, and they would presumably remember. They wouldn't have. Yes, it's 1.
Rachel.
Yes, I mean, I did have a quick look. I thought there were a couple this year, but they were early finishes, like afternoon ones and daytime ones. Is that correct?
There's only been 1 temporary event notice.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. And how many expected evening events How many would you expect to happen over the course of a year under the new, if we permit the license?
We have discussed this, and clearly you don't know until you're able to make the to offer the facility how much is going to be how much demand there's going to be, and some of the events may not be till midnight. They may wish to be till 8:30, 9 o'clock. If you're having a 70th wedding anniversary, you may not have people staying late there. So they don't know is the answer, because they haven't been able to find out what the demand is, and they can only offer the facility once they have the legal license to be able to provide it.
But events could have been offered under 10's licenses, so up to 15 a year. So I'm wondering whether up to 15 a year under 10's licenses would not meet the applicant's ambition.
One of the things is the kitchen is yet to be completed, and the toilets should be completed this week. So they haven't wanted to fully utilize the temporary event notices either. And the temporary event notices are something that should be in addition to the premises license as and when they might be needed. So I don't think it's a legitimate and proportionate reason to say because people can have temporary event notices, they should not be granted a premises license, or that the premises license should be restricted. But your legal advisor will be able to guide you on that.
Thank you.
Got a few questions,
yeah,
if I may.
Please, Ian.
Thank you for your submission. I have a few questions I'd like to move through quickly with you, if I may. The chair has already touched on the frequency of events involving extended hours. I think you've given us an answer on that. Just in terms of the opening hours, I noticed that the opening hours coincide with the hours for the sale of alcohol. So I'm wondering about how you would manage drinking up time, so that at the point where you finish selling, you can...
My instructions are that they would stop the sale of alcohol 30 minutes before the license expired, okay, to allow drinking up.
So the license hours need to be shorter than you've asked for? Is that what you're saying?
Well, clearly it would depend on the nature of the event, because if you've got 25 people having a dinner and sitting down and you're serving wine, and it comes, and port, and you're having a speech, and port finishes, and it doesn't take a half an hour drinking up time. So it depends on the nature of the event. You tend to think of drinking up time in relation to pubs. People buying a pint just at the last minute, and then needing time to finish it out. That's more of a pub and a club thing. When you're talking about the events through here, you're probably talking about maybe only a few people drinking towards the end of the licensed hour, or toasts or whatever, and speeches and events like that, so that you're having those. So if the suggestion is that the licensing hour should be brought further forward, then that's not something that the applicant...
But with respect, I'm really asking, if you're selling alcohol up to midnight, then you can't expect people to leave the premises at midnight.
We're happy to set for 30 minutes before.
Yes, okay. My instructions are, I'd be very happy for you to amend the application so that the sale of alcohol was 30 minutes before the end of the operating.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next thing I'd like to ask about is customer parking. We've heard a lot about the need for access. We've heard a lot about the narrowness of the road. I've been along that road myself, and I can envisage it. If you have an event occurring with a lot of visitors from outside the village coming, where would they park?
I think we've sort of covered that. There's parking in the farmyard, and also fields if the conditions are suitable. Clearly, if there's been a downpour and it's the middle of winter, but then you would gauge the number of events. Sorry?
I was just going to ask.
And the answer that I've just been given is clearly they're not going to have events that they can't cater for the car parking. So the events will be, and they'll know this is not a sort of open ticket, open to the, you don't know how many people are turning up. My instructions are that the events that will be late, they will have a good idea of the number of attendees, and they won't arrange events where there is overcapacity for car parking.
So what is the capacity of the yard, as illustrated here, and the field?
20 to 25 vehicles. They haven't done the conversion.
In this yard, and then what in the field?
The field's big. We could
fit hundreds of cars in the field.
But in boggy, muddy conditions,
well, again, if the parking wasn't available, then those type of events wouldn't be arranged in winter time, for example.
So you're saying you wouldn't use the field if the conditions weren't suitable?
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing I'd like to ask, and maybe I've misunderstood this, but did I read that part of your business plan is to let the premises to third parties to run events there?
Such things as workshops, yes. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's making a candle making workshop, they're let, but it's going to be managed by the applicant. Okay. Every event's going to be managed, so it's not going to be a case of here's the premises, we're walking away having nothing to do with it. Okay. Because they will be selling the food and the alcohol directly, and that will not be, as I understand it, you're not subcontracting out the catering. So they're going to be there for the purposes of providing food and beverages.
I guess my question really is, are the third parties running the bar, or are you running the bar?
No, third parties are not running the bar.
Okay, all right. And you've already indicated what kinds of events those would be. Are the evening events also likely to be let out to other third parties?
Like workshops, etc. We don't have any other planned, but it would also always be managed by me.
All the events in the evening are going to be, the bar is and the catering is going to be managed by the applicant.
Okay, so at no time will anyone else be running your bar?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, good. Can I just ask then, we've heard a lot in the representations about concerns of, security on, prevention of crime and nuisance for the local residents. What measures would you propose to put in place to give assurance to your neighbours that you're managing the safety and security of their immediate environment?
Can I direct you to page 5 of the licensing hearing pack? It starts, in fact, on the very bottom line of page 4 with the Challenge 25 scheme. And then it goes on there to deal with staff training, the refusal log, the incidents log. You also have heard, you've seen the written submissions which have been read out, and those include the orderly management of...
I'm going to just interrupt you there, my apologies. I understand those measures, and that's fine. What I'm really interested in is the more active intervention. So would it be possible, for instance, if there was an event in the evening, for your neighbours to contact you directly and to say, it's getting a bit loud, can you turn it down or stop, or, when are you going to finish?
Yes, I'd be very open to that. And of course, in the written submissions, it says we are happy to liaise with the neighbours to give notice of upcoming events. Yeah. And as you've heard, the applicant says now, and to be available to have a live intervention if there is an ongoing nuisance at that particular point.
So just to be clear, would you be willing to undertake to have a publicly available point of contact?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. And can I just ask finally, given the hours that you've asked for, and I acknowledge what you've already said about drinking up time, are there other hours that would, arrangement of hours that would make the business proposition viable for you, such that it could be shorter on certain days, it could be limited to certain times in the evening? Are there other arrangements that would still allow you to pursue the business in a viable way?
I've covered that in discussions I've had before. The
Could you remind me?
Difficulty is flexibility. In discussions I've had with the applicant before. The difficulty is flexibility. If somebody wants to book something for a particular day or a particular time, a candle making workshop or this or whatever, there needs to be the flexibility that the license caters for a wide opening period in order to slot in the requests as they come in, rather than say, oh, well, I'm sorry, you want that on a Wednesday. We're not only licensed on a Tuesday.
I understand the need for flexibility. One final thing, Chair, if I may, just building on a comment that you've already had from the Chair about the frequency of events. Would you be willing, therefore, retaining the flexibility as you've just described, but would you be willing, therefore, to undertake to limit the number of evening events over the course of a year?
Can I take instructions? But can you say what you're thinking in terms of what kind of limit? Are you talking about a limit on the number of days?
Yes, perhaps equivalent to 10s. Sorry,
can I come in there? Because this is, in a way, a version of Ian's question. The parish council, as you know, suggested a number of conditions or changes to the hours and other terms. So I wanted to ask, and those include a limit to a specified limit. They suggested 12 special events per year, but just wondered, of all those proposals that the parish council suggested, which would be acceptable?
Better way of asking.
Well, although, as I gave from my previous discussions, I think it's unlikely to be fully used, but it is necessary for the flexibility. In addition to the temporary event notices, which I don't believe there is a power for you to limit as a matter of law, the utilization of the Friday and Saturdays for a limit of 20 would be something my clients could, the applicant could live with for the period, for the time being.
So up meaning up
20 Fridays and Saturdays, Fridays or Saturdays, in other words, a total of 20 Fridays and Saturdays, not 20 Fridays and 20 Saturdays.
And if I may ask, what about
annually and in any 12-month period? Under the premises license,
as opposed to under 10s. The parish council suggestion was for shorter hours with the flexibility that you've referred to a number of times being provided by the possibility of applying for 10s.
That would be too restrictive. So the offer is to amend the application to restrict the number of Fridays and Saturdays to 20 under the premises license.
I'm not sure if that's something we can do, can we?
Shall I you just think about it if you've got any other comments, but I think you potentially could, but we would need to be able to know how many events you'd had, because any condition that's put on a licence has to be enforceable. So if you were going to propose, you'd have to be very clear what you're saying. So are you saying 20 times a year, a calendar year, starting from January to December, you will go past 11 o'clock? Is that what you're saying, or?
It's within any 12-month period, limited to 20 events, utilising the premises licence after the hours of 10 p.m. 10 p.m.
10 p.m. Okay, and then in addition to that, there would be need to be a way that we could check that. So onto that condition, you'd have to add something like you would keep a record of all those times you utilised those special events, shall we call them, and that information would be available for us if we needed to follow it up and check how many that you'd had. Was there any other?
That can be done by amending the incident log to say that the incident log should also record all times that condition, whatever the condition number is, under the premises licence be utilised. But we can leave the legal department to draft that, I'm sure.
Was there any other legal point on that?
I would only just suggest that just suggest in terms of always looking at the objectives, and obviously if we're looking at the objectives, if we're limiting the number of, does that then satisfy the situation? If it doesn't, then the licence shouldn't be granted. So that's the point I make.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting that you allow a variation. You allow permission to vary the application, because I don't think that imposing those conditions would be lawful, because they're not proportionate to the in achieving on the evidence-based the licensing objectives. However, if it is done by way of an application to vary, that you then accept, then it can be done in that way, I think. But what the panel cannot do is impose, in my respectful submission, is impose the condition. So what the panel has got to consider is whether they give permission to amend the application and then grant it. What they cannot do is further tinker with it, if I may use a non-legal expression, when they retire and come back and with something else, because that is not something which is part of the application to vary that they are being asked to grant.
But your application is your application. If you're asking it to be varied, it's what your request is. The committee, if they decide to, can make a premises licence in the terms of conditions legally they see fit. So if they decided in terms of that it was not appropriate, then they would not grant the licence, if you know what I mean, in terms of the it's all about proportionality, isn't it? But my concern is that you've put your conditions in the licence of the application. If you're asking it to be varied, that can be considered, but it's whether you're putting in that application to vary.
Well, to be plain, we're only trying to accommodate the concerns that the panel have expressed through their questions by trying to be helpful and cooperative.
Yes,
by making the application to vary.
You've indicated the fact that you would be prepared for the Fridays to be 20. I think that's clear, and that's something you would welcome if that was the committee's concerns about the number of events per year. I don't think it necessarily needs to be varied, but what I would say, just for the committee's purpose, is that it's the objectives that are the concern, and whether that alleviates any concerns. So I just say that in the open committee, because that is the overall consideration.
Thank you. For a point, sorry, Ian, in a moment, but point of clarification on that. So you're suggesting that it would be acceptable to limit the number of Friday and Saturday evenings to 20 over the year. However, the application is for any 12-month period. Within each, however exactly that's defined. But the application is for 7 days a week until 11 o'clock.
It's till 12 on a Friday and Saturday.
With an extra hour on Fridays and Saturdays.
Yes.
So the limit of 20 Fridays and Saturdays would still leave the other 5 days of the week available.
They would be less likely to be in practice utilized, of course, but the flexibility would be there.
I think we're going around in circles a little bit here because the flexibility, I mean, we are giving a license to allow, and we cannot then, prevent under that license that the applicants could then do whatever the license permits, which would be 7 days a week with a possible limit on the number of Fridays and Saturdays. And the flexibility, we've gone back and forth on this, the 10s is a way of allowing a flexible, limited number of evening events.
Can I just add a couple of points, maybe just to get it a bit clearer, because I think we're all getting confused now. So we have an application in, as put in the application form. The panel have the right to make a decision to either grant that or refuse it. They can add conditions onto that licence, and they can pull hours back if they feel it's appropriate. I know you've talked about evidence, but we also do have to consider about the potential impact, because if you based it on evidence alone, every new application would have to be granted. There would be no reason to consider it. So you can't, it's not just based on actual evidence. You have to think about the concerns of the residents, think about what mitigation the applicant has put forward, and ultimately it's for you to decide what is proportionate based on that. But you do have the power to pull hours back or put conditions on if you feel it's proportionate and appropriate. Is that just kind of clarify it a little bit for everybody and get us a little bit back on track, maybe? Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may just add to that, on the matter of direct evidence about evenings, we apparently only have one event over the last year, the 110s application. So the absence of direct evidence is... And
can I just say on that 110 event was the one that I referred to, which is the one that I could hear throughout every room in my house. So the only evidence that we've got so far is that I would argue that presents quite a public nuisance, even if we can't think about the potential problem with evidence. The actual evidence we've got is that it had a direct impact on me and my family.
Right, thank you. And do we know for that 110s application, what were the hours permitted in it?
Yeah. I think it finished at 5 p.m.
So we've had there's been no evening activities, and that's why no one is complaining about what we've heard, because we haven't heard anything. And that's the concern around the size and the scope of what we're talking about. And I appreciate the comment about, and I was going to ask you, Mr. Mason, about the kind of restrictive nature of the hours. I'm just interested to know what events you can only run to midnight as opposed to running them to, say, 9 or 10 o'clock.
Can I say, Mr. Chairman, we're getting a little bit out of the order, but
okay, sorry.
But in the moment we'll get to questions for the applicant when that will be proper. Go ahead.
The applicant has held numerous evening events, just not with alcohol. So the fact that there have been no complaints and there's only one instance that Mr. James has given evidence about, it would indicate that evening events can be run without disturbance to the neighbours.
Evening events with music?
Without music, because there hasn't been a licence.
Ian and Paul.
Thank you. One further question from me, please. Would you be prepared, even when you're running these evening events, to limit the times for music outdoors?
Yes.
So if you were running an evening event to whatever time, you would be happy to put a curfew would that be, say, 7 or 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock. We'd be willing to do it. Okay. 8 o'clock.
Yeah. And could I just then also ask, if you move the event indoors, what additional measures might you be prepared to consider to insulate that sound from travelling?
Well, the windows and doors would be kept shut. We wouldn't object to a condition about that. And they're not single glazed, I don't think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. Could I just draw your attention? You have actually got 2 positive representations in your application from representatives of the local community. And in the first one, from one of your local residents that apparently is only 4 metres from your farmer's yard, it clearly states that the cafe is currently open Fridays to Sundays in the daytime in block capitals, in bold print rather, and have said that they have no plans to extend their regular hours in bold print or to turn this into a late night venue. Have you had this communication with these residents and given them that impression?
The current hours, of course, without a premises license, are till 11 anyway.
We choose.
So the current opening hours without a premises license are until.
We have it 8:30 till 4, but we could have it 8:30 till 11.
Yes. So I think there is no extension of the current permitted opening hours under, for example, the planning permission, because the premises already can open until 11 o'clock. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, here we're talking about a submission for an alcohol and music license, so that would not necessarily give clear representation to your residents when you make that sort of statement, would it?
Well, my instructions are that they've spoken to him and he was on board, so I can't go any further with that. He's not here.
Thank you.
Thank you. From the panel, any more questions? In which case, I think we can go on to the summing up stage. Sorry. They can ask questions. All right. Sorry. Thank you, Rachel. Do the residents have any questions for the applicant? Any further questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Mason, I'll ask you that question again about kind of, you talked about the restrictive nature of kind of specific hours. What is it? What events can only be run until midnight on a Friday and a Saturday night that couldn't, say, be run until 9 or 10 o'clock?
Well, the general nature of for example, birthday parties, anniversary parties, that kind of event, normally these days does not close at 10 o'clock. The standard expected licensing hours, if you're going to offer a party venue, is till at least normally midnight or 11 o'clock. I don't know of any venue that would be commercially viable if they said, come and have a party or a celebration or wedding anniversary, but we're closing at 10. I simply don't think you would make it commercially unviable, and the whole point of diversifying and a premises license is to be able to run a commercially viable venue.
Okay. Can I just ask for a point of clarity? You're talking about parking, and that the events would have parking on the kind of hard standing outside, which might take 20 cars if they're parked correctly. And then we were talking about potentially using the fields as overflows, which I think we would recognise works during the summer when it's really bone dry, doesn't work in the winter, and it becomes an absolute quagmire. And therefore, just some sort of clarity from you that you won't be parking on the verges for any of these events that you talk about, because that's been one of the issues. So they either park on that hard standing or in a field.
The answer is yes, and it's been covered here by saying that the parking will be supervised and organised.
Yeah, but okay, I accept that, but I think we have got evidence that that doesn't happen now. So there is parking on the verges all the time, and that's one of the conditions of why I think so many people are against this. So I just wonder whether legally there is any way that we can enforce that there is no parking on the verges when there are events happening. Otherwise, it is likely to happen.
I think the way to address that is to make very clear on an event-by-event basis that those with cars have to park in the car park, and parking on the verges is not permitted. Insofar as, and I haven't been to the venue myself, but insofar as my clients could put up notices to that effect legally, lawfully on their own land, I'm sure they would be willing to do so. They would be restricted on doing it on a public road, I think, without the permission of the council. But they would have no objection and support the council putting up notices, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And that kind of leads me to my final question, Mr. Chair. And you talked at the beginning of your kind of submission that we talked about a lack of street lighting, pavement, parking, everything else, and you kind of implied that it wasn't your client's responsibility around as a consequence of not having street lighting. I'd like to say that I think there is probably a requirement on behalf of the client to do everything they can to mitigate around not having street lighting, parking on the verges, just the darkness. You say yourself, you've not been there. Until you go there, you don't realise quite how isolated and dark it is. And I would like to ask the client reassurance that they would look at helping mitigate the impact of having people coming out on a Friday and Saturday night at midnight, walking down or driving down a road that is not lit, that is single track, with farmers using it all the time. So we need to work together to find some sort of mitigation.
Well, I think you might have misunderstood. What I said was that it is not within the power of my client to start putting down traffic calming measures, for example, on roads. It's something which would be unlawful for them to do. So insofar as they can lawfully do things, they will. And insofar as they would require the consent and work by the council, they would support and encourage that. The signage does, I know from having done licensing for 30 years, does actually have some effect, especially in small venues, and particularly if you're talking about what are essentially private parties rather than nightclubs populated by young people. And I can be assured that it would be totally within the applicant's interest for there to be no complaints and no problems, because that would be the best way to promote the commercial success of the business.
Yeah, understood, Mr. Mason. I think had you been there, you'd realise that signage isn't practical because you can't read it because it's dark.
Well, the signage, I'm sure, where they're parking and in the venue when people are leaving could be done.
Yeah, okay. The parking is a field. There's no lighting in there. My point is, there is no lighting. It's incredibly dark. We're asking up to 90 people by your own admission to leave the premises at midnight, having had a great time. I think that is an issue that we absolutely need to work together, because we can't just allow 90 cars to drive through the village at night. It's as simple as that. And I don't think there's any acknowledgement that your client needs to support kind of efforts to mitigate that.
Yes, there is. They wish to work with the local residents and the community, and to do so actively to make this a success. And they will do so. And as I say, they've attended 2 parish council meetings. They wrote to the parish council. This is all above the statutory requirements of consultation.
Okay, thank you. Then any other questions for the applicants? No? Then I think now we can go on to the summing up stage. No responsible authorities here. Other persons sum up. That means whether you, the residents, any of you would like to give a brief summing up of your view. Or have you said as much as you?
Yeah, I go back to what I said right at the beginning, which was about striking that balance between finding something that works for the farmer's yard, but also works for the residents in a safe manner. However many events that they run, my 10-year-old will still listen to every single one, and that's a concern for me and for other residents. But I appreciate we need to strike a balance, and that's what I would urge the panel to do.
Thank you very much. And then for the applicants to sum up, please.
I think we've covered it in some detail, but let me clarify what the application, should you wish to grant it, is to amend the application, to vary the application. And that is to limit the... Can I just take a straight? So I've had instructions, 20 days to include weekdays, so all days. So all days, the utilization of the premises license for music and entertainment to be limited. How would that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult.
I think your application. Yeah. I think what I would say is this, on this point in relation to limitation, as I mentioned previously, that it's the licensing objectives that we're looking at here. Prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance, public safety and protection of children. Those are the licensing objectives. And when the committee come to consider their decision making, they will consider those objectives. Those the decision making will be either to refuse the application for a premises licence, to grant the application in terms applied for, or grant the application with conditions of amendments. So those are the matters they're looking at, and they can attach conditions to the licence, but those conditions must be appropriate, and the Act's objectives, and they must be proportionate to the types of premises. And all I would say at this stage is that any consideration of the committee, and my advice would be, is that you have to be careful about being over restrictive, of course, but conditions can be placed. So I think what I would say is, I think the application would have to remain as it is, but it's noted the comments you make in relation to the number of events. Whether the premises licence is granted or not, with an attached condition, will be a consideration for the committee in due course, looking at the matters which I've mentioned. I hope that assists.
Thank you.
I'd just say we appreciate the applicant's willingness to have such a limit. As a way to put that into permission if we grant it. So I think that brings us to the end of the hearing. Thank everyone very much for coming. What happens now is we will retire the panel with our legal advisor and discuss and reach a decision on the terms that Shannon has explained. And we will give our decision within 5 working days. Most likely we will have that decision today and you will be given notice of that, but formally within 5 working days you will hear our decision.
Just to clarify, you're not proposing to come back to this hearing. The hearing finishes.
No, we're ending the hearing, yeah, and we will be in touch, quite likely later today, informally, but in any case within 5 days with the formal written decision. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Please get home safely.